Hello YouTube and welcome back to Happy Hour. Today we have an unnamed question mark 24-year-old Speyside whiskey from a giant big box store. Stay tuned. Hello everybody and welcome back to Happy Hour. So you can probably tell from the intro and probably from the thumbnail if you recognize what we got here today, but it's kind of interesting. This is a Costco single malt whiskey. It sounds silly. Costco's selling it, right, under the Kirkland brand. For everyone who's familiar with Costco, I think even overseas you guys got Costco. But yeah, Kirkland is their brand. They don't make anything. They sell socks and sweaters and cheese and single malt whiskey. So this, I have never had a Kirkland branded booze before, which is kind of interesting. I've been a little bit late to the party on the whole Costco thing. Obviously, I've been to Costco millions of times over the years. My wife and I just renewed a membership not that long ago. There's only two of us, so Giant buying 17 pounds of mayonnaise generally isn't necessary for just the two of us. But anyways, we got the Costco membership again, and we're kind of roaming around. And I'd heard of some of these kind of older single malts being available for a pretty good price. And I saw this 24-year-old. So this year, this is a 2021 release. I just bought this, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago. It's a 24-year-old Speyside single malt whiskey, sherry cask finish, which you can probably tell by the color. Now, does not say anywhere on here that no color's been added. I think if you had anything this dark, now mind you, it's 24 years old, but I feel like if anything this dark that didn't have color added, I think you'd be probably pretty proud to put that on your bottle. But anyways, don't know, doesn't matter. I'm gonna guess there's color added, and there's nothing about chill filtration on here. So we're gonna say there's color added and chill filtered, but it's still a 24-year-old. Speyside single malt whiskey. Now Kirkland, I believe, they've been doing this for a few years at least now. I remember seeing like 21-year-olds and 18-year-olds and 22-year-olds over the last 2, 3, 4 years come up on the internet. Now, there's really no way of knowing what this single malt actually is. Now, this is bottled by Alexander and Murray. I think they do all of the Kirkland stuff, or at least the single malt stuff. And Alexander Murray is a pretty well, respected independent bottler, kind of like a Signatory or, these other guys, Barry and Rudd, or, there's a ton of them out there. But, yeah, so what is it? Who knows? So the closest I have been able to kind of establish with the minimal amount of research is that this guy, what says his name on here? Lip. Steve Lip, who's the CEO of Alexander Murray. I think there was an article some years back where he was talking about the distilleries that Alexander Murray's buys from, and he named off, Craig Alecky and Glenrothes and Tomatul and, some other slightly more obscure distilleries that maybe we're not too familiar with. The irony or the interesting part is I heard someone say that this picture on the front of this bottle, I don't know if you can see it, but is the Craig Alecky Bridge. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. I haven't heard anyone be even close to the definitive of what this whiskey is. But look, we know it's a Speyside single malt whiskey that's been aged 24 years. There's an other interesting note that I will make about old whiskeys, which there's nothing factual about this, but if you guys watch the Whiskey Tribe, which if you watch whiskey videos, which you do if you're watching this, you probably do, they made a point at one time, which I thought was kind of interesting about older whiskeys. Obviously, just because it's old doesn't mean it's good, right? Just because it's young doesn't mean it's bad. The flip side of that statement is true as well. Just because it's old doesn't make it good. In fact, there was some anecdotal thought that it kind of makes sense that maybe some older whiskeys really were never that good to begin with. The thought process being, let's say you imagine you're aging your whiskeys, and obviously as the ages grow, these guys are testing them, the master distillers and the folks that work there, they're kind of testing them when they hit certain kind of benchmark ages to see if they're ready for whatever that flavor profile they want to release is. So let's say you got a bunch of 12-year-olds and they test a bunch of barrels and they're like, these ones are good. These are our 12-year-old. This is what we want to release as 12 years old. These ones, not so good. Let's let them age a little longer, right? So maybe we hit the 15-year mark and there's some barrels. They test all the barrels. They're like, oh, these ones are good for 15. Maybe these ones aren't quite ready yet. Let's just sit them longer. So it kind of does make sense where you could see that some older whiskeys never maybe made the cut for the previous year releases. I don't know. It's anecdotal. But, conceptually, I can kind of see where that makes sense. So let's get back to this guy. The really interesting part about this for a 24-year-old whiskey is I think this was under $80. I think it was $75 or $78. So a $78 24-year-old single malt, that doesn't really exist anywhere else. I have a few 18-year-olds and a few 21-year-olds, and they're easily double the price of this 24-year-old. So that's interesting. One hand, you have Costco, Alexander Murray, these huge companies that you can say, well, they're buying in bulk. I don't know. The bottom line is we got 24-year-old single malt for $80. It's worth buying, right? At least worth trying out. All right, so I've already poured a glass. As you can see, I have noticed that I like to generally, I don't drink a ton of 18-year-old plus whiskeys. I have some bottles, but those aren't my daily drinkers. So I tend to, when I do pour them, let them kind of sit a little bit longer. There's an old, I didn't want to call it a cliche, but an old adage that, ideally you maybe let the whiskey sit in the glass a minute for every year of its age. Sounds interesting. I do know that as you let it sit, they do tend to open up a little bit more. So I just, again, pre-poured this about 20 minutes ago. Let it sit, and let's dive in with the nose. So you can see I've had quite a bit of this already. Now it's been several months. Like I said, I bought this several months ago. I think I kind of cracked it the first night and probably drank most of this, maybe 1 or 2 visits on this, but it's been at least 6 weeks since I've tried it. My first nose smells like bourbon. Now, why does it smell like bourbon? Because there's a lot of oak in here. A lot of oak. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I will say the older whiskeys that I've enjoyed, the ones that I enjoyed the most, in fact, I can't think of any of them that were overly oaked. I feel like this may be something to do with this price and what we're seeing here, is that the barrels maybe kind of beat up the whiskey a little bit more than one would like. So obviously I get sherry notes. I do get some lighter fruits. I get some like orange peel. And the classic sherry, a little bit of the funk, not a ton of funk. I get kind of lighter fruit notes, which is interesting. The color is throwing me off, I think, because I don't normally smell what I'm smelling in those lighter fruit notes with something this dark. But the oak is pretty, I don't want to say overwhelming, but it's pretty prominent. So as I head back in there, I am getting kind of that Christmas spices, kind of that cinnamon. Little cinnamon and nutmeg. Like it actually smells really nice. The oak is throwing me off a little bit. It's a little bit more oak than I even remember when I had this the first couple times. But again, it's not overwhelming, or it's not off-putting, but it's pretty strong. All right, let's have a taste. Yeah, it tastes really nice. I probably should have pointed this out too. This is bottled at 46%, which is kind of nice. I definitely appreciate that. It's actually very mild on the taste. It does not have any of that kind of ethanol alcoholic kick. I know 46 is not really overproof, but this is a very easy drinking 46. So I get some of that orange peel, that dark, kind of almost like maybe a little bit kind of a burnt orange peel. I do get some spices, pretty spicy, kind of nice spicy, cinnamony, cardamom, kind of that type of spicy Christmas cake spices. And I got quite a bit of oak tannin. Which again, I like with my bourbons, right? I kind of guess because I kind of expect that more with bourbons. I very rarely get the kind of that deep, dark, oaky tannins with single malt scotches. I can't really think of any at the top of my head where I get this much from. Now, mind you, I'm not drinking a whole lot of 24-year-olds. Like, obviously, the older the whiskey sits in barrels, one would just assume that you're going to get more oak imparted on it. But I'm thinking of, like, say, Glendronach 1821. I've got a Jura 21, 18 Dean Stanley. Like, I've got some older whiskeys that, yeah, there's not as much oak. So if you like bourbon and you like oakiness, this is not a bad choice for you. It's good. It's honestly, the age, the color is throwing me off a little bit in my head. If someone was to pour that for me in blind and I couldn't see it, and I didn't know it was 24 years old, but they said, hey, this was a $80 bottle or a $78, $75 bottle, whatever the heck it was, I would say, okay, this is really interesting. And it's really interesting for a single malt scotch, again, not to beat a dead horse here, but I can taste more oak than I'm used to. So I find that kind of intriguing, and I would be curious of what's going on here. They told me it was very, very old, I guess. I could see where that oak kind of imparts its flavor. It kind of reminds me a little bit like an Aberlour Abana. Like there's a little bit of that, there's quite a bit of Christmas cake spices, which I like. Kind of that, again, the dark rind, the orange rind flavor with the Christmas spices. The sherry isn't crazy coming through. I feel like the oak is kind of beating up the sherry flavor a little bit. It's good. I think it's certainly worth trying. Heck, just to have a 24-year-old scotch, I think is kind of cool to try. The price isn't objectionable. If I paid over $100 for this, I'd probably be a little bit more annoyed. Well, not annoyed, just I'd be a little bit disappointed, I guess. But I'm kind of happy with this. I'm glad I bought it. I would recommend anyone who has a Costco, at least go see what they got. Yeah, it's, I'm not going to put it at the top of my list. I'll enjoy drinking the rest of this. But, you know, again, when you first see 24-year-old Speyside and you see the color of this, you see 46%, my initial instinct is, wow, this is going to be amazing. And it's not amazing, but it's good. I'd give this, last video I talked about rating system. Is it a 7? Maybe it's a 7. Again, you know, the price to age ratio kind of bumps up the points a little bit for that. Again, you're getting a really old single malt for a reasonable price, at least in comparison to other whiskeys of this age group. It's a little bit heavily oaked, and other than that, it's not super interesting to me. But it's good. So, on that note, hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked, give me a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, that would be cool too. And yeah, we're going to keep testing whiskey and drinking whiskey. Somebody's got to do it. It's a rough life. Thanks for watching Happy Hour. Happy holidays. See you soon.